I guess to segue into transition ever so clumsily, if they do win, I think that it's because that they're going to be playing a very Europeanized style of basketball, like the Mavericks kind of were, where they're pinging the ball around the perimeter and they're playing a very strong brand of quasi-zone defense. And what I want to know is you often frame zone defense as a matter of personal honor. I look at it as a systemic change that's been kind of imposed on the league that you just have to, you just have to go with. And I guess what I want to know, do you think that anyone is to blame for using zone? And if people aren't, and if it's just the systemic thing that people have to go with, is it making the league worse?
Well, my question I always ask about zone: what are you getting out of playing zone defense that you cannot get from playing man to man? That's just that's the question I have. What are we getting from it? Like what about the current state of affairs is going to require a team to play zone defense to have this level of success? Like, I ask you this because I personally don't know what it is.
Well, I think what it is it makes driving harder and guarding space. I think guys are so quick that you almost have to guard space instead of guarding people to account for where they're going as opposed to, where they are. And I think, does Beckley want to jump in? We just got the 3-shot with Beckley.
Yeah. I think
as a basketball
to
nerd,
answer
Beckley
Bomani's question directly, I think there's two things that teams would look for directly out of their zone. One is that for the most part, an NBA team's man offense is just going to be more practiced and better than an NBA team's zone offense. And the other is that if you're having trouble getting out in the fast break and you're having trouble getting a rhythm that way, and you're in a zone where you're putting your two ball handlers and you're keeping them up top where they can get free releases to run out, that can also be helpful to run the wings. But, I think you're right that the zone is more of a facet of modern man defense, right? Is that you're basically going to have two guys playing really good man-to-man defense, forcing in a certain way, and then one guy will be jumping back and forth across the paint to zone up on space that the offense wants to use. But I think that every team, well, the Bulls basically play zone, but the Heat don't really do this. But if you don't have the defensive personnel to match up individually, zone can just be a good way to disrupt offensive flow, to give your team a chance to impact the game.
And that's why I say it's cowardly. Right. That's why I say it's cowardly. It's not that it can't be effective or it doesn't have a measure of merit, but you just hit it right there. If you can't guard the other team, then go play a zone. Now, what I think,
but that's like saying if you can't drive, you shouldn't be able to shoot threes.
I get what you're. I mean, I understand the point you're making, but you understand what I'm saying also. We play zone when we don't think we can guard the other team, and I do believe it's more so in college that I think this matters in the NBA. But I do believe that there's a real something to the idea that we as a unit are going to guard you. That there really is something to say that we're going to take you on and man to man, we're going to get you. I do think those things matter. I don't know how they spell out in numbers and it sounds somewhat antiquated. Now, one thing I do think though about the NBA that people don't talk about, when the illegal defense rules change, the biggest shift I thought beyond the mere fact that it allowed you to play zone was that you were now allowed to kind of play man and do a lot more shading over toward people, right? Because before the idea was you had to guard somebody. And on top of that, you could not have more than one man guarding someone who did not have the ball. You couldn't
stunt at the post. You either had to leave and double or you had to stay on your man, and that makes it a lot more difficult for post players now.
Exactly, and you can't do stuff like I remember once I watched Danny Ferry, don't ask me why I remember this, about 18, 19 years ago, get called for an illegal defense where Michael Jordan had the ball at the top of the key, he's guarding the next man over, and he's just standing in between them, right? You could not do that before. These are things that you can now do with NBA defenses. And it's interesting that the trade they made was less contact, but you could do more of this cheap shit like this, where you could just go stand over there to the side, and we could just be like halfway in between, right?
But is it only cheap because it wasn't allowed before?
Maybe. That is entirely possible. That it is a function of me growing up with a certain game, and this is no longer the game that is being played. I think you're right, and I think it's interesting in talking to you guys. I've come to realize that a lot of the notions of what I had NBA basketball being are to a degree antiquated now, because not just because of the changes in the rules, but because the changes in the rules are now so ingrained. Like, I can't even remember anymore when they made all of these changes, right? Like, they are now a function of the game. This is not a game I grew up on, and I on a fairly consistent basis have to kind of make adjustments on what I think, because I still am kind of in a game where, okay, like, I look at college players and I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to be able to play in isolation, and how are you going to be able to play the pick and roll? Those are the two questions I have about guys coming out of college. But what playing the pick and roll is slightly different now than it used to be, and what playing in isolation is different. All of these things. Yeah. All of this is to say, I do understand and agree completely that as a strategic change of pace or whatever it is, that playing zone defense can certainly be effective. I'm just never going to be about that life. And if you can't guard people man-to-man, sure, go ahead and take the coward's way out. Hey, there's a lot of money on the line, right? There's a lot of money on the line, and I can call you a coward, and I can call you a champion.
I don't think that if you're not guarding in a zone man-to-man, it doesn't matter what you're playing. You still have to guard. No matter what defense you're in, you still have to be able to stay in front of the guy you're guarding.
To a degree, you know what though? But if it was still the same, if guarding was still the same, wouldn't anybody play zone now? Would they? Nah, you're guarding.
Well, if
they
let you grab and play zone, no one would ever score.
I would say it's weird.
And zone defense. I hate everything about it.
I don't, I'm sympathetic to what you're saying to a certain degree. While I would not frame playing zone as cowardly, I just think it's what the system requires for good defense at this juncture. I think that one of the issues I have with zone defense is it can make individual brilliance harder to flaunt. You have all these people collapsing and just making it hard. I kind of enjoyed the old days when Michael Jordan would just go score, and just be beating his man down, and there was no recourse. It was kind of fun to watch that. So I wonder, do you think
much more enjoyable?
Problem with this?
It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to watch bad players do that.
Yeah, but zone defense subsidizes media. That whole change in rule scheme. We have to agree with this. It subsidizes mediocrity at the expense of excellence. I think we can all agree upon that, right?
What type of mediocrity?
I don't like that.
Yeah, it's redefined.
Athletic mediocrity or skill?
All of it. Every bit of mediocrity. The idea that we have this defense that allows you to compensate for the fact that you can't match up for people makes it easier for the mediocre and more difficult for the stars. It's one of the biggest problems with college basketball, is that you have a guy like James Worthy score 14 points a game because it's a game that allows for that. It's subsidized, because in college, if we didn't subsidize mediocrity for excellence, I don't even know what it would be. It wouldn't be the entertaining game that we want. I like seeing the best players in a position to do the best things that they could possibly do, and I understand people say, well, you can diversify your skill set to do all these things in the new setup. I don't care about that stuff. I liked it better when we had our good old-fashioned isolation basketball game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you guys have just made it so clear to me that it's gone. And I enjoy this new game. Don't get me wrong. But can you imagine if they had the same contact rules now, but a cat like Chris Paul, and you couldn't do all this cowardly tomfoolery to protect your point guard who can't guard him?
Well, what about LeBron? I mean, LeBron would score every time down the court.
Yeah.
If LeBron was
single covered
every time, I'm just saying it would be a different game, but he would still be the best player.
We just can't put the toothpaste. We can't put the toothpaste back in the
floor, scoring 1-on-1.
No, I would watch it all day.
All day long, man. We'd all watch it.
That's like the video game.
Yeah, we'd all watch it.
Well, okay. Here's a question: what about, how is it different from football? Going by your argument, would football be more enjoyable if there was no zone defense and we could just watch Calvin Johnson just killing cornerbacks? Would you be okay with that reform? Would you want to do that?
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool too. But we're not talking about football right now. We're talking about basketball. Basketball. You should be able to guard your man. You should be able to guard your man. And on top of that, in football man-to-man defense, I mean, it's very rare that you're going to see somebody just man up all the way across the board. We're not requiring you to blitz and sell out and all of this stuff like this. We're just saying guard your man, and you've got help behind you. That's the beauty of man-to-man defense. It's a metaphor for life. Like, I don't mean to sound like such a conservative, but you do your job, and everything will be okay. And then if worse comes to worse, maybe we got you.